on, Maggie. Hi, I'm Jeff Lowenfels, and I'm a garden columnist. For 20 years, I've been telling my readers all of the intricate things that a garden columnist likes to write about. How to grow big little area, how to have a fantastically gigantic vegetable garden. But I realized that many of my readers could care less about these items. What they're looking for is an easy way to take care of their yard. They don't want to spend all of their time gardening. What they want to be is gardeners. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you some tips. They're going to make it very, very easy and very, very simple for you to have a beautiful yard. Best of all, if you follow these tips, you'll be a gardener too. And it won't take more than 1 hour a week to get results like these. I guarantee it. Sit back and get out your journal and take notes. Do keep a journal. That's the first thing you need to know if you're going to be a gardener. It's easy. If you take notes, you'll know what you did in the past, and during the winter months, you'll be able to figure out what you want to do in the upcoming season. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get going. Someone once said you could move the world if you had the right tools. Well, in fact, you can do anything if you have the right tools, including making gardening easy. It shouldn't cost a lot of money. Let's go find out what tools we need. There's no reason to make it complicated. You don't need a lot of tools, but you do need good tools. And these are the ones that I recommend. First of all, you need a pair of gloves to protect your hands. You need a pair of clippers to cut things. You need some sort of a trowel. I use a dibble to plant things. Maybe you want to have a fork to loosen up the soil around the plant. I like to keep these small tools in some sort of a bucket. Carry this right out to the garden. It's pretty handy. As far as taking things in the garden concerned, maybe planting a tree or two, you need a spade. This is not a shovel. Notice how flat this is. That's the difference. You need a rake to smooth the soil. Maybe you want a little smaller one if you have a very small garden. And you might want a pitchfork, not absolutely necessary. This is nice for working the soil, so you don't have to rent a rototiller if you have a small garden you need to turn over the soil. It's also good for picking up leaves. Speaking of picking up leaves, you need a lawn rake. Absolutely essential, because leaves are an integral part to making your yard a nice looking yard and having very little work to do to get it that way. Obviously, you're going to need a hose reel with some hose on it that you can take to the other areas of your yard, hook it onto your hose and have even longer length. In fact, I have hoses that reach every area of my property, and so should you. You need a lawnmower and a lawn tractor. This is probably one of the more expensive items, still under $100, however. This automates the watering of your lawn. It's a fabulous little invention, and everybody really needs to have one. You need a hose end sprayer, something to put fertilizer down, and maybe something to put a herbicide down on the lawn as well. Different one if you don't want to mix the two. Obviously, you need to have some sort of watering system. This is for watering hanging baskets. It has a water break on the end so that the water comes down gently. You might want to have a sprayer. Clearly want to have on and off switches at the working ends of all of your hoses so you don't have to run back to the faucet. You might want to have a Y at your faucet at the back of the house so that you can have two hoses working off the same one. Different kind of sprinkler. A very important garden tool comes from the hardware store. Tightens up all of those leaky faucets and things that drip. You don't want to get wet while you're watering. And as far as hoses are concerned, all of them need to have one of these systems attached to it. This is a coupling system. They clip in to these. These go on all of your working implements. So for example, if I wanted to hook this onto the hose, I just snap it on. This end goes on all of the implements that hoses use. A watering can comes in handy. Some stakes to stake up things that get big, maybe to mark paths, or maybe just to hold two strings out so that you can have a straight line in the garden or clean up something in the yard. Some labels, maybe some ties to tie things on that stake if you don't want to use your string. How about a dandelion fork to get dandelions? Something to weed in the garden, a hoe, or something like this. This is called a wing weeder, a new kind of tool that's very, very effective. Those are really very essential. You probably would want a wheelbarrow of some sort. I like one of these carts. I have a pair of these. They're useful. Shears for getting those big limbs. And here's a great new tool called a lawn shark. I use this to cut out pieces of the lawn, even out around my driveway to make the place look sharp. And I can also use it on some limbs that aren't too high up. Just a saw blade on a handle like this. This is a great item. It's just pipe insulation. You can get it at any hardware store. It's hollow. And this foam can go right over your tools, your long-handed tools in particular, although you can use it on short-handled tools. And by going over the tools like that, you use it, you don't get blisters. It's really a nice little item. Not absolutely necessary, but I like to have it. There are a lot of things you don't have to have. How about one of these? Keep it dry when you kneel down. Makes it a little soft, particularly when the ground's cold and hard. Not necessary, but if it makes it easier to garden, that's what you want to have. That's about all you need. Simple. Nothing complicated. A little corner of the garage can hold all of this stuff. You don't have to buy a rototiller. You don't have to go out and get a big fertilizer spreader. If you need big ticket items, rent them. That's what rental stores are for. Make it easy on yourself. Let somebody else take care of the expense. Let somebody else take care of the maintenance. You get the tool when you need it. But these you should have. You don't need anything else. The dog, incidentally, is optional, although I highly advise getting one. Come on, Maggie. The biggest feature in your yard is undoubtedly your lawn. So it stands to reason that if you have a good-looking lawn, you're going to have a good-looking yard. You know, I know the trend these days is to try to convince people to have as small a lawn as possible and to convert it into gardens. But you know what? It's a lot easier to take care of a lawn than it is to take care of a garden. And gardening is about ease. Mowing the lawn. The very words conjure up a picture of a hot, sweaty job, something that takes a long time, that's messy, and certainly isn't very much fun. But you know what? I mow my entire lawn, and I'll bet it's bigger than yours, in less than 45 minutes. It doesn't have to be the way it used to be. Let me tell you how to have an easier time mowing your lawn. First of all, I use a reel mower whenever I possibly can. This is a reel mower right here. Notice it doesn't have an engine. Believe it or not, and think about it, it probably takes you about 20 minutes to set up your lawnmower. You have to get it out, you have to make sure it's full of gas, that it's got oil, and then you have to start the darn thing. Well, I don't know about you, you probably inherited your lawnmower from the person who owned the house before you were there, but as far as I'm concerned, after the first year, lawnmowers, power mowers are very difficult to start and tough to maintain. A reel mower isn't. And you know what? These reel mowers aren't like the ones that you used when your father said, get out there and cut the lawn. They're much lighter. When you think about it, the reason why you have a power mower is because you're pushing a heavy piece of equipment. And in the old-fashioned way, you were carrying the leaves and the blades of grass in a bag. That's not what happens today. Today, we've got a very light machine. It doesn't even have that bar down at the bottom. These things weigh 25, 30 pounds. You don't need power to push them. It's your legs. You're still doing the same amount of walking, and it's still taking the same amount of time, only you haven't had to fool around with a power mower. And you don't pick up the clippings. These clippings contain 90% water. They fall on the lawn, and in a couple of days, particularly when it's sunny, the water evaporates and the grass itself begins to decay, returning the nutrients that are in it back to the lawn. Again, when you think about it, walking back and forth with lawn clippings in a lawnmower bag is a lot of work, and gardening is supposed to be easy and simple. Just leave them on the ground. They'll return the nutrients, and you will never know the difference, except mowing your lawn will have become an easy chore. You know, you can have the lightest non-powered mower in the world, and mowing the lawn can still take time and still be work if you don't do it the right way. And there is a right way. What you need to do is lay a turn track down around the perimeter of the area you're going to cut, whether it's your whole yard or just one section of the lawn. This is an area like this, which you pre-cut. Now, having done that, I don't have to worry when I get to the edge about turning. I just do it quickly and I mow. It makes it so much easier and so much faster. And of course, it results in a better looking yard. Got the turn path down, now I'll just cut it out. You mow your lawn when it needs it. You don't have to do it on a regular schedule. Cut about 1/3 of the blade down each time, and the blade should be about 3 inches long. Why 3 inches? Not only is it healthy, but when it's that tall from a distance, it covers up the holes in the lawn. And if you got a dog like mine, you've got some bare patches. Thank you, Maggie. We don't need any more thatching. Professional groundkeepers use a lot of tricks to make yards look better. The best one is to cut your lawn on a diagonal to the front door. This will create an optical illusion, which will make your yard look like an estate. Vary your mowing patterns from week to week as you mow your lawn, and have some fun while you do it. The next thing you need to do is lay out your watering system. And it all starts here at the faucet. Unfortunately, many houses only have one faucet, so you may need to increase the use of that faucet by putting in a Y connector. They even have ones that have 3 and 4. I've even seen 5 of these. So if you really want to spread hoses around, these are good things to have. But absolutely essential is a watering computer. This one costs under $10. And here's how it works. I can set the water on or off, and I can set the time, and then when I turn this on, the water will run for whatever the time is, 1/2 hour, 1 hour, whatever I set it at. Now, I want to have water all around my property, so I've put hoses actually underneath this particular area, and they go up behind the side fence. I hook them on with my Fast Connects. These should be on every single hose implement that you have. I pull it off, and then if I want to hook it onto a different hose, I just hook it on like that. No twisting, no turning. This saves you a tremendous amount of time because you can set the computer and go away. You don't have to turn the hose off. These save you a tremendous amount of time because you don't have to stand there and twist and worry about washers. Everything is tight, just the way you need it, like that. Remember, you're setting up a system so that watering is easy. Usually people spend a tremendous amount of time fussing around with watering. No need to do that. Simple. That's it, and you water. Now this is the working end of the hose. Here we've got one of our attachments, and we've also got an on-off switch. It's very important that you have hose that can reach every section of your property, the far corners as well as the near corners, because you're going to want to water those areas, and you want to make it as easy as possible. Speaking of easy, here's how I do it. I've got these hoses laid out. This particular one comes down behind this fence, and it's got a little extra length here in case I want to use it to fertilize or weed and feed out in this particular area. And I can also use it to water my flower bed over here. And what I've got here is a permanent hose system laid down in my flower bed. All I do is hook this up. I've turned it on at the computer, and I turn on the switch, it waters the whole garden. It's that easy. And later on, if I want to water the garden on the other side, I just pull out the extra length of hose and I hook it onto this sprinkler. You leave these systems out permanently. You should never have to fool around with watering. All you should do, hook it on, turn it on the computer. And incidentally, if you don't have a lot of gardens, you just leave something like this hooked up the entire season. So all you have to do is turn the computer on. God, it couldn't be any easier. Why do people make it so difficult? Now, I want to stress one other thing. I mentioned it before. No leaks. There's water in this hose right now, a lot of pressure. But I don't have any leaks in this hose. I've got good washers, and I've got everything tight. If you want to make it easy on yourself, don't get wet. Well, I'm done watering for the day, and probably for the week. Now, I like to water at night because I think you have less evaporation, but it doesn't really matter. Make it easy on yourself. Remember, you only need to spend 1 hour a week If you have a system, taking care of your yard is easy if you make it easy. Here's kind of a fun idea you never thought of. Instead of wearing regular shoes, put on your golf cleats while you're working in the yard. You'll aerate the lawn and maybe even improve your game. Or, if you did nothing else but give your lawn 1 inch of water a week, you'd have a pretty nice looking yard. It's very important that you do water your lawn. And between the rain and what you give the lawn, it must have at least 1 inch of water a week. That's why I've invested in this particular piece of equipment. It's called a lawn tractor, and it's actually one of the most expensive tools I have. It cost about $70. But for $70, this tool waters my yard automatically. I lay the hose out, the lawn tractor travels along the length of the hose, I've got it connected to the computer at the other end. What could be easier? It walks and does the watering for me. What a great tool. For $70, you couldn't pay a gardener to come in and do this for you. So let's go turn it on, see how it works. Well, after you water your lawn, then you need to think about fertilizing it. Now notice I said think about fertilizing it, not fertilize it. There is a difference. This is an area that is completely shrouded in mystery, and there's no reason why it should be. Fertilizing your lawn is easy to do, and knowing when to do it is also easy. You look at the lawn. If it's not as green as you like, if it's not as green as your neighbors and you want it to be that green, then it probably needs some fertilizer. And if it is as green as you like, then forget about it. You don't need to fertilize. There is no reason to follow a manufacturer's instructions as to when you need to fertilize your lawn. When it looks like it needs fertilizer, then it does. Put it on it. Provided, of course, that you've been watering it properly all throughout the season. Now, what kind of fertilizer do you use? A powder fertilizer or a liquid fertilizer? Well, frankly, powder fertilizers are heavy. They require a fertilizer spreader, and they're a lot more work than just simply using liquid fertilizers. Get yourself a fertilizer that you can mix and put into a hose end sprayer. What you're looking for is one with a very high first number. It represents the nitrogen, and that's what greens up the lawn. Forget about the other numbers. They can be as low as they can need to be. It's that first one that really counts. It should be above 20 if you're going to use it on your lawn. With a liquid fertilizer, you simply mix the liquid or mix the fertilizer into some liquid, in this instance obviously water, hook it onto your system, again using the hose system that we talked about before, and then all you have to do is turn the water on and fertilize. This entire yard, 2 acres, I can fertilize in 20 minutes. Why? Because I use a liquid fertilizer and I've got a hose system set up so that I can reach every portion of my yard. It's very, very easy. While we have this hose end, once you do fertilizer, sometimes you get a couple of weeds in your yard, and that makes the yard look unattractive and uncared for. Well, we know you're spending an hour a week, so might as well get rid of those weeds as well. Things like dandelion and chickweed and those kinds of things. And for that, you can use Weed Be Gone or any kind of broadleaf weed formulation. These are put on using a liquid applicator. And again, it's the same system. You mix, you hook up, and you spray. You clean up, and that's it. Now always read the directions very, very carefully when you use something like a weed killer, but it's very, very easy. And once you do it, that's it for the season. You don't have to do it all the time. There's no reason to fool around with messy powders that you've got to put down with a spreader that kill weeds, that also fertilize at the same time. It's very, very easy. If you don't want to worry about a broad application, then there are other ways you can take care of some of the weeds, particularly the broadleaf weeds like dandelions and plantain. This is a weed killer. All you do is stick it into the weed, and out comes a formula that you've mixed inside the tube. Another way, manually, completely organic, is to use a dandelion fork. It's a sharp little instrument. You stick it into the ground, and you pull up the dandelion. It's very, very easy. None of these chores should take you very long. Fertilizing, killing the weeds. Those two items, plus watering, make for a beautiful lawn. If you did nothing else but took care of the lawn, you'd have a good-looking yard. But with just a little bit more effort and not that much more time, you can also have a very nice-looking garden. This is a beautiful flower garden. And you know what? There's some vegetables in here too. The trick is to keep it simple. Before you do anything in the yard, you have to have a plan. So use your journal, create a plan, and then follow it. When you start a flower garden, you can either do it from seeds or you can buy starts yourself. If you do it from seeds, it's a tremendous amount of work and it takes a lot of time. Remember, you want to keep it simple, so buy starts and avoid impulse buying. Follow that plan. It's so hot and sunny, I can't believe it. I need my sunglasses and I need some sunblock. I sunburn the first few times I go out in the springtime. So do plants. That's why you need to... Plants that are grown indoors are protected from ultraviolet rays, which cause sunburn. They do on people and they do on plants. That's why anything that's grown indoors has to be hardened off before you put it in the garden or the yard. Doesn't matter whether it's a tree, whether it's a single plant, even whether it's a big basket or something. Anything grown indoors has to be hardened off. And it doesn't matter whether it's just the springtime, you have the same problem in the summer and in the fall. The way you harden off plants is you put them on the north side of the house in a shady location, and you protect them from the wind. This is a place where the plants are going to need to stay for 3 days. After that, you can move them into dappled sunlight. When they're in dappled sunlight, they slowly get exposed to the ultraviolet rays. Now again, I have to emphasize, it's not just plant starts, it's baskets, it's trees, anything. While you have them in this area, you should be preparing them to go into the garden. And that means watering them with a dilute solution of fertilizer. I'll tell you why a little later on in the segment. Three days, dappled sunlight, and then after a couple of days in dappled sunlight, sunshine. Well, after you've hardened off your starts and your plants, it's time to put them in the ground. With starts, it's very easy, and in fact, with any kind of plant, including a tree, it's all basically the same method. They've been hardening off, they've been fed with fertilizer for a week, so all I have to do is put them in the garden. And the garden has already been watered, so I don't have to fool around with watering until I get everything planted. Pop it out. I'm going to use a dibble. This was my father's. You could use a trowel or a fork. Make a nice hole there. You can see how wet the soil is. Put in the plant. Just like that. Put some soil around it, and then, of course, mulch around it. Now, not every plant needs a label, but every kind of plant you have has to have a label. So if you get 6 of a kind of a plant, just put a label on one of them. That way, when people come by and say, well, what kind of flowers did you plant? You'll be able to tell them because you have a label on the one that identifies it. That's it. That's all this garden needs. The sunlight takes care of it. Occasionally, I fertilize it, but that's it. It's so easy. The first thing you should do is take a bar of soap. Why soap? Well, part of gardening is cleaning up, and cleaning up can take a lot of time. But if you take a bar of soap and scratch it before you go out and garden, and if you rub it on those spots where you do accumulate soil, well, then you've got a protective barrier that makes it easier for you to clean up when you finish gardening. It's all part of the 1 hour a week, and I don't want to spend a lot of time trying to get the soil off of my hands. Well, the starts are hardened off, and then they're put into the garden. But this isn't just any old garden. This garden has been specially prepared. What do I mean by specially prepared? Well, for starters, I've laid out my watering system. I've got a watering computer at the other end. I've got my quick connects, and I've actually custom made a special hose. It's just the right length, and all I have to do is turn that computer on, and it waters the garden, shuts it off automatically, and that's that. Now, you've soaked these plants in fertilizer before you put them in the ground. And the reason why you did that is so that you don't end up fertilizing the weeds that are in the garden and ready to germinate. It's very, very important that you follow that step because it's going to save you a lot of work. And those weeds that do germinate, well, that's what the leaves that you collected in the fall were for. You take them and you put it around the plants once you've got them in as you've designed them on your plan. And once those leaves are down, and that's it. So I've got my watering done, I've got the plants mulched, I never have to weed throughout the year. What could be easier? Well, maybe throwing in some of those vegetables that you've always wanted to grow, but didn't really want to spend a lot of time taking care of. So I've got some tomatoes in here, some cauliflower, some overgrown broccoli, lots of things hidden in my flower garden so that it looks good and so that it's easy to take care of. Notice how close the plants are. There's no reason to do things in rows. If you do things in rows, you're going to get weeds in between them. Now, while we're here, there are a couple of problems that people generally have in the garden that need some special care. I'm not a big advocate of using all sorts of chemicals. It's too complicated. It takes too long to read the little print on the labels. But there are two problems that you can take care of very easily. The first are caterpillar problems, and they occur early in the season wherever people garden. Caterpillars will eat through the leaves, make little holes in them. Well, the way to get rid of them is to use a product that contains Bacillus thuringiensis, better known as BT. I can't even pronounce it, but I know it works. It's a bacteria, and it's very safe. You mix it, and then you simply spray it on the plant. The caterpillars eat them, it gets their digestive system, and that's the end of caterpillars for the rest of the season. There's no reason why you should be putting anything in terms of poison on a garden that has flowers or vegetables in it. It takes that kind of work, you're spending too much time. Well, another pest you might have are slugs. Now, everybody knows that slugs love beer, and if you put beer in shallow containers and put the containers down, the slugs will come in, drink the beer, and drown. Well, what a waste of beer to catch slugs when you can use yeast instead. Because it's the smell of yeast that the slugs are attracted to. But here's the tip that you probably won't read anywhere else, and you won't see on any other video. You take the container, and instead of putting it in the garden to get the slugs, you put it outside the garden 2 or 3 feet, and you just fill it up, and you use it there. Attract the slugs out of the garden, not into the garden. That's basically it. It's real easy. The end of the year, I'll harvest the vegetables, I'll dig up the flowers, and next spring, I'll be ready to go. Couldn't be any easier. And on top of everything else, my hands are going to be easy to clean too. Now, just a word or two about fall chores. They're necessary, not very difficult, and they'll sure save you a lot of work when you start up the garden next year. First, leaves. You've got to rake them up sooner or later, and if you wait until the spring, they'll be soggy and heavy. What takes just a little time in the fall will save you from a real chore in the spring. Why anybody would want to spend the effort to pick up all their leaves and put them into bags, only to lug them out to the curb, I don't know. Rake them onto your flower beds, put some around your shrubs, and the rest you can put into a pile where they'll compost. Collect 1 or 2 bags for mulching in the spring. Once the growing season's over, don't forget to disconnect your hoses from the faucet. If you don't, the faucet may crack. And drain the hoses so that you can leave them outside all winter long. Mark your driveway and your walks so that you can keep people and cars off your lawn and out of your garden beds. You can use bamboo poles, tomato stakes, or even string, or go out and buy reflectors. The important thing is you don't want to create paths that are going to be in your yard well into next summer. Obviously, put away all your tools. You might want to oil metal parts now so that they don't rust. Cooking oil works fine, and of course, if any are broken, repair them or throw them away. And now's the time to buy new tools. There are lots of sales at garden centers in the fall. Don't forget to clean up your garden beds. Pull up all the spent annuals, and if you find any weeds, get them out of the garden now. If you want spring flowers, now's the time to plant bulbs. Last but not least, put away that spade, and pull out the snow shovel. Well, there you have them, the basics. Just remember, water properly after you've set up your watering system early in the year. Use leaves to keep weed growth down. Mow properly by leaving the clippings on the lawn, and plan ahead. If you use the basics, no matter where you live, you only have to spend 1 hour to take care of your yard. And I guarantee it'll look just great. And of course, that'll leave plenty of time for the pursuit of other activities. Just remember, yard work is easy.